Hello, this is Jay Denson of Fit Health Well, and today I have a very special person, man. That I had a great opportunity to interview. This gentleman is a Brooklyn native. He attended James Madison High School. He was a standout running back in football that evolved into a prolific public speaker. He appeared on TED Talks in February of 2019. He was selected to Team USA to represent the country in the sport of para-powerlifting, and was the first to be selected from New York City. In terms of his strength, this gentleman lifts over 300 pounds in national competitions. And I don't know, we'll get into 2020 with COVID and everything, but he was training for the Olympics in Tokyo as well. So we're going to get an update on that. He is also the founder of the Garrison Redd project. And if that's not enough on his resume, he also has aspirations of becoming the New York City mayor. This brother, I was really impressed with him when I seen videos of him just doing calisthenics and working out in the park. So without further ado, my special guest today is Garrison Redd. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
No problem. Now, I know that was a lengthy intro, but did I leave anything out?
Yeah, you left out a lot of stuff. That was just the beginning. You didn't even get into like the middle.
Absolutely. Well, definitely. We're going to definitely cover that, man, because, as we discussed before, what I always do is always have my guests, man, just give a little background of their story and things like that. So, without further ado, just tell everybody and the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. At the age of 17, I was outside on an ordinary summer night where I got shot in my back, which I suffered a spinal cord injury. But prior to that, I was a straight A student going to school. I wanted to actually play in the NFL. I was a standout running back for James Madison High School. I was sixth in the city in rushing. And, life throw you lemons and you just got to make lemonade out of it. So, everybody's here for a reason. So fast forward, I went to school. I got my bachelor's in finance for a little. And then when I was working at the IRS, I had an epiphany, like, I'm way too cool for this. I need to be out in the world just giving off some of my good qualities. And then things just started to fall into place from there. So it was like all organic. It was natural. So just basically, sometimes you just got to find yourself. You just got to think about what you want to become and just go after that, chase that.
That's pretty dope. And I want to spoon feed these to the listeners as they're listening to it. I know you spoke about the accident in terms of getting shot when you were 17. When that happened, did you feel defeated or how did you keep going? How did you find the motivation to, to continue on this path that you're on?
Well, honestly, I never really fell into a depression because instantly I was around positive people during the initial incident. So it was for the first few days, I was just around positive people. Once I came out of the medical-induced coma and all of that for a day or two. And then the doctor was there. And the doctor changed my perspective and outlook on life because she was basically, if you can't play in the NFL anymore as a player, obviously, you could be the coach. And when she told me I could be the coach, that gave me that mindset of I could be a leader and I could lead others because at the end of the day, you point the finger at the head coach. There's 52 players on an NFL football team, but there's only one head coach. So it just changed my perspective. And then being in rehab and seeing people that injuries was more severe than mine, it was no time to really be depressed. It's bro, look, look at what's going on right now. And it changed your perspective, it changed your outlook when you see, kids that never had the ability to use their arms or any part of their body. And, they're trying to just hoping one day they could brush their teeth. It just changed everything. It puts everything into a different perspective on what you need to be grateful of and what you need to be appreciative of.
Absolutely. And then one thing that I keyed in on as well, too, is when you was on TED Talks, you said something like life is like lemonade, right? And it's kind of it's that mantra, too. My grandmother would always say that as well. It's just if you get lemons, you make lemonade, which is, if we're translating that in terms of your story and what you've been through, is you made the best out of your situation, right? I think a lot of times when unfortunately when someone's confined to a wheelchair, and everyone's different, right? Some people like yourself, they find motivation and they grow, and then other people, they find depression, but you were able to get out of it. You said something that I really, really gravitated towards as well, and you put an line through disabled, right? And you said I like to label it abled with limitations, right?
Yeah.
How did you come up with that, and just explain what you mean by that for a little bit?
Well, in my case and in many others' cases, it's like when you have a disability, you have to learn how to adapt. So being that you learn how to adapt, you learn how to do the same thing that anyone else is doing. You just learn how to do it a different way. So that's a limitation. Like, you're not going to expect me to run up a flight of stairs, but I could still get up the same flight of stairs. And I have my options on the way I'm going to get to the next flight of stairs. So with that said, it's just a limitation. And it's not something like, put it like this. If the whole world was accessible, everywhere was accessible, there was no staircases, then there would be no restrictions on wheelchair users. Society imposes restrictions on wheelchair users. So with that said, it forces us to adapt if we want to do and achieve the things that's necessary for us to achieve. So everyone's different. I mean, me, I'm more defiant. Like, nothing's gonna stop me. So there's no limit. Honestly, there is no limit in actuality, because you can do whatever you want, pretty much. You just have to find the way you're gonna do it.
Exactly, and I like that, right? I think a lot of us, just in our everyday life, when we think about disabilities, we're not thinking, okay, well, this person can't do something. This is really what you just said, is we are presenting obstacles as a society and not making things accessible. For example, like not having more ramps, right, and not having
Exactly.
these, right, these things is just a limitation. And I really didn't think about that until I heard your speech. And it's amazing that you said that. And if there's anything you want to add to that, like, please, let us know.
Yeah, that's it though. Like, yeah. So that was, my outlook. So once I started realizing, how society is imposing these restrictions, it's up to someone to point it out. Like, this is a restriction. I mean, you got to think of it like, if Rosa Parks didn't sit, if Rosa Parks didn't sit on the front of the bus, who knows? Segregation might have still continued for years on after. So it takes someone that's willing to point something out that's incorrect or that's not equal to everyone else.
Exactly. And speaking of pointing something that's incorrect, you brought up disabilities in the workforce, right? So my next question is really a two-part question. Is when you entered the workforce, what part one is, what were you seeing that were in terms of accommodations, right? Like, what were you seeing that there wasn't enough accommodations? And then the second part to that is, what were the strides that you've taken to rectify that situation?
Okay, so yeah, for instance, like, as far as when it comes to accommodations, that's the tricky part. That's the gray area. The reason why I say that's the gray area is because you're not really allowed to ask what type of accommodation do a person needs when you're an employer, because of ethics and things of that nature. However, in that regard, it opens it up for assumption. So someone could assume what someone needs, and someone doesn't always need what is needed or what that person feels that is needed. Like, with me, like, for a desk, as long as the desk I could just wheel under it, I don't need a special type of desk, or I don't need any type of special type of computer or anything of that nature, because it was designed for anyone to use. With that said, a lot of times employees feel like the accommodations that they got to make is going to be so much that it could be a qualified candidate that's willing to, perform the job duties to the best of their ability and probably better than anyone else. But that assumption comes into their mind, like, this is a course now. Now this is a course. What is the procedure? Because maybe they only did a course for like less than an hour when they went through training on how to deal like with disabilities and as far as like fire drills or different situations. So all of that is going through their mind, and then they make a decision. Maybe I'll go with the next person, and that's why the unemployment rate is so high in the disabled community. Is due to the fact that I think it's a lot of misunderstanding. So it takes people like myself. My thing is to educate others. So like I have different means of providing education. Like I could provide consultation if that's a means, or I just provide YouTube videos, and I'm open to questions. So you can ask me the question at the end of the day. Like anybody that hits me with a question on how could they better serve someone else, I'm gonna give them an answer to that, because at the end of the day, that's what it takes to educate yourself, is by asking other people different questions.
Absolutely. And like that literally leads to my next question. And I'm going to stick with your term here just because I loved it so much. For people who are able with limitation, what is the biggest misconception, that society gets wrong, and what can we do better in terms of our our mind frame of thinking?
The one of the things I think is, and it goes back to the last question you asked, is I think society should ask individuals more questions, so that way they could just be conscious, and it would change their perception when it comes to a point where there's a need for them to make a decision between a able with limitations individual or somebody that's able-bodied or whatever the case may be. But when it's that point where it's a decision between the one or the other, if they ask those questions, previously to someone who was open and telling them in a social arena, in a social setting, or however the case may be, then their perception might be like, he could adapt easily to different situations, and it just might increase their chances of attaining something they're looking for.
Absolutely. Another thing that you talked about, and it's not something that I thought about, or I think anybody really thinks about too. And this fits well with what our mission is wellness, right? And you spoke about the importance of health, with people who are able with limitations.
Yeah.
Regarding that, right? Like what is something that we don't know about, or some things that we don't know about, and what path have you taken to look into that?
Yeah, well, typically when somebody does have like some type of injury, not only the injury is the issue, but their other body parts are working harder because it's compensating for whatever the injury is, whatever has a limitation currently. So since the other body parts are working harder and your body's your temple, it's up to you to, keep it intact, keep it healthy, keep it moving. And one of the things is a lot of times when you're sitting down all day, you just develop, different bad habits, such as like munching on foods and just not being as active because you're just kind of stationary when you're not moving at all. So me personally, I feel like I do YouTube videos, showcasing some of my workouts, and I open the door for questions. That's at the end of the day, like the way I work out might not be, the same for everyone else, but they can get an idea. And when they can get an idea of how I accommodated myself, then they probably could do the same thing and figure out a way just to adapt certain equipment they probably have in the house, and they'll be able to be moving, being active, and being active is the key. The body was meant to move.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think the second part to that too, and yeah, help not only any able people with limitations as well, but just regular people. Like in terms of nutrition, right? Like what are you eating, and like what helps, and what's beneficial that goes hand in hand with your workouts?
One of the things I do, I try to follow like a vertical diet. And for those people that don't know what a vertical diet is, I do eat like a good portion of red meat in my diet. Pre and post workout, I try to have a carbohydrate such as like white rice or a potato, depending on how tough the workout is. Also, I try, some days I may have oatmeal as a pre-workout. It all depends on the intensity of the workout for that particular day. And so that's one of the things. I try to get in a good amount of fruits and vegetables, but for most people, what I recommend is just to have a balanced diet. That's pretty much the key. Just a simple balanced diet. Make sure you get all your micro and macronutrients in, as well as I'm a big fruit guy. That's where I get my carb source from, fruits. I try to stay away because with para-powerlifting, I have to be in a particular weight class when I compete. So I try not to go over my weight class too much, I should say.
Definitely. Yeah, and for anyone that's listening and is following too, because I tend to like to break things down even for first time listeners. When he's speaking about macros, guys, there's really three components to that. It's your fats, it's your proteins, and it's your carbs. And he gave really good advice just in terms of having balance with that. I've spoken to nutritionists and trainers and things like that. And, what I found what works, and even in my own diet is, when you lessen the amount of processed foods that you have, and just kind of just sticking to those wholesome foods, right? Like the rice or the sweet potato, good fats being avocados, and things of that nature, that always helps. So it's good to hear that from you. That's a really, really, really good diet that you're having, and
Yeah.
conducive to what you're doing. Now I want to get into the fun stuff too. Now is the powerlifting, right, man. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Again, guys, you go to his, we'll share the YouTube channel at the end of the episode. But man, this brother got some amazing videos. I mean, he's like doing pull-ups with the wheelchair, right? And he's just, and then I'm seeing him bench pressing, and it's amazing. So my first question to you is, in terms of training, man, how did you get to the level like where you was just pumping out like 300 pounds and more?
Well, it was crazy because as a kid, as a child, I was always strong because I played football. My father, like when I was like 13, 14, I'm an only child, so he bought me like a weight set. He like, even though I played football, you're like, I don't want nobody bullying you or stuff, so you're going to hit the weights right here. It was in the basement. There's nothing to do in the winter time, really, in New York City. It's snowing, it's cold. You just don't go outside. And rather than being on the video game all day, I just started like gradually lifting weights. And then like by the time I was 16, I was able to lift like 315 pounds. And actually playing running back. However, I knew I was strong, but I didn't know I was world class strong. And then after my injury, I like stayed away from sport. Just didn't care. Like you put all of this effort into something and it can be taken away from you in a second. Then it's like, what's to do it for? So I didn't play any adaptive sports early on. And then I'm in a gym. I started going back to the gym. I'm like, I gotta get healthy. Like, I just want to go do something, find a hobby. And from finding a hobby, I met this guy. He comes up to me. This is after I had like the epiphany at work and everything, where I'm like, I'm way too cool to be at the IRS. Then around that time, this guy comes up to me and is like, yo, you should play some wheelchair football. I'm like, I don't really know about wheelchair football. You're going to fall, you could break something. Like, how does that work? And this is not like being paid. It's not an Olympic sport or nothing. So I'm like, he's like, nah, just come out. So I came out. I met with this guy, John Hammer from the Wheelchair Sports Federation. And he's like, yo, you could be a Paralympic medalist one day. And I'm like, what? He said, I see something in you. Tell you what, I'm going to connect you with like the best track team in the country, which was the New Jersey Navigators. And I started doing wheelchair track racing, but it was just so cool because like everybody that was on that particular track team is one of the best. So it's like, all right, now I'm training with like this one guy, Franco, won an Olympic gold medal at Rio, the Olympic Games in 2016. And, we on the same team, competing, practicing together every day. Then my coach like, how much do you weigh one day? He's like, I'm like, I really don't know how much I weigh. He's like, we're going to figure all of that out. Don't worry about that. There's a powerlifting meet. I'm going to put you in it. I see that you're very strong. And then I went to the meet. I weighed like 120 pounds and I could lift 250 pounds with no training whatsoever. And then the next day, like the Team USA performance manager called me. He was like, yo, you're like you're one of the strongest athletes in the country in that weight class. Like you could go far. We're going to have a first thing when any Olympic or Paralympic athlete has to do is have to take an educational course. It's like 8 hours and it teaches you about the sport, the do's and don'ts. And it's very technical. I think it's called like a technical course, level 1 camp. And it was just a coincidence that camp was being held in Long Island. I lived in Brooklyn. So everything was coincidental. So it was like, if the light is shining, you go towards it. So I'm like, all right. Then I competed. This was back in 2018, I believe. Yeah, that was when I first competed. And when I competed in a competition, I was able to lift 275 pounds. Well, before that, I went to the Olympic training facility because they went to see if I could lift all of that weight in person. So I went to the Olympic training facility where Michael Phelps, everybody been there. You can name it. They was there. And, you know, being in that atmosphere is just incredible because it shows you got over 20. Somebody told me it takes 20 years for overnight success. And it's really true. Like, it takes a lifetime of consistency to be successful. So it was like, wow, all the other stuff I did helped me get to the Olympic training facility in Colorado Springs. Imagine if I go a little harder. Imagine if I do a little more. It gets you a little further. So it just opens your eyes. And then once I made Team USA in powerlifting, and I lifted like 275 in competition, 286 at qualifiers. It was like, now I got to compete world class. Now I got to showcase my world class strength. Unfortunately, I was scheduled to go to World Championships in Bogota, Colombia, but it was canceled because of COVID. It was March 20th. I think the lockdown started. Well, it was like March 16th, and the lockdown started like 2 days prior in New York City, the whole quarantine. But I still been training consistently. You know, the guns are still there. And I got an incredible coach. One of my actual trainers, he coached some of the top athletes in the world in powerlifting. So with that said, and he's very he's a great guy. Like, he's a great person. It's like a Tyson and custom model relationship. Like, he's the genius. You just perform. That's it. All you have to do is just show up. I got everything else. The thinking part is I don't have to really worry about that as much. But, you know, I'm a student of any game. I want to learn everything. So, like, Michael Jordan and Floyd Mayweather would. I want to know who was the best, who was the second best. Like me, I keep a rankings list of whoever's in front of me in the world, and as I pass them, I just check it off.
I love that, man. And just in terms of too, like when you telling us this story, it sounded like everything just kind of fell into place. Like, you know, even from like when you was recruited for the football, and then that led to the powerlifting, right? And it's just like, it's amazing to me. And then I want to talk about as well too, you know, being selected to Team USA. You know, how did that feel, man, when you found that information out? And then part two of the question is I know you was training for 2020, and with COVID, what's going on with that?
Well, me being selected, you know, like, I just think everything's a part of the journey. So a lot of times it's like my excitement isn't there. Even my girlfriend would tell you my excitement isn't always there because I'm the type of person, like, this is just a part of the plan. Like, this was written already. So when I get to the end of the book, then I'll probably feel that joy, feel that excitement when I win a Nobel Peace Prize or Mayor of New York City or something. Like, that's when I feel like that's when the joy and excitement will come out. Right now, it's just like I just got to stay hungry, stay motivated, and just I want to be the best. I'm not the best yet. There's somebody else in the world that's better than me, and I got to take his spot. So, and with COVID and everything, like I was saying, you know, I was scheduled to compete at World Championships, and depending on how I would have did at World Championships, would have gave me qualified me for the Paralympic Games in Tokyo in 2020. However, everything's pretty much postponed a year. So I just pretty much had to I stayed focused. Luckily, I had a weight set from when I was a child. The weight set. One thing you never throw away, people, is weights and books. It's something. It's forever. It lasts you a lifetime. You only buy it once, and it's good. Take a little bit of care of it. You don't gotta take that much care of it, and it will just do you justice.
And I'll tell you 100%. You are so right about that. Let me tell you something. When COVID started, the two things that I had in my house is weights, because the gyms were closed and you could not find weights in any store. So I always had that. And when I was young, my uncle, he never had a gym membership in his life, but he was in and out of prison. And when he would get out, I would go to the park with him, and all he would do is calisthenics.
Get money.
That's it. Yeah, he do. I know you know this, but he do around the worlds, which is pull-ups, dips, push-ups. He do his diamonds. He do his wide grips, and I mean, he was ripped. So if that's a source of motivation, use that as well. I don't know if you're familiar, and listening to you talk as well, I take to you because you're very ambitious, and it's good. And I recommend this guy. You probably know who he is, but David Goggins, and it's a book you
Yeah,
can't.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't hurt me. So what I love about him is, he says, everybody talks about the wins, and you look at, making it to the top of Mount Everest, right? But we don't talk enough about the struggle, and myself, I think that's very important. And
Very important.
right, because a lot of people, they see the end result, but they don't see what it took to get there. So my question to you is, what was probably, if you can reflect, what was one of your life's biggest failures, and what did you learn from it, just during the course of what you're going through right now?
Failures, it might sound funny, but I don't believe there's any way you could ever really fail unless you don't try. I don't believe there's a failure. You either learn or you win. It's no such thing to me as a failure. Like, I can honestly tell you, since I was a kid, when I was a child, my father would never let me quit doing anything. Like, I played baseball, like 6 years old, like T-ball. I had a bad season. I wanted to quit like middle of the season. He's like, yo, once you quit, you always gonna quit. So with that said, I just never quit at anything. And when you never quit at anything, you really see the outcome of not quitting. Like, it's gonna be bad days on any journey. You're gonna start something, you're not gonna be good at it. The reason why you're not good at it is because you just started it. You haven't developed something that someone that's 12 years in has developed. They know everything, the ins and outs. So whatever you're doing, you never really fail. It's like in life, you could really never fail, honestly. You could just plateau. Only people that fail is the people that quit or don't try. If you quit, then you failed. All right, you gave up. If you seen it through and you didn't have the success that you expected to have from it, you learned that's not for you. Do something else. Or you learned what not to do and what to tell someone else and educate someone else on how to do it. I'm sure a majority of those coaches, like life coaches, they had to quit or they had to try. The only way you could be a life coach is you tried this, you tried that, you wasn't that great at it. And now you're like, I'm a life coach because I could guide people on how to get out of their situation and just keep trying to do something else. So that's how I feel. Like, your life coach is a person who just kept trying. That's it.
And I like that perspective too, just because it's like you said, I think the only true way to fail is if you just stop doing something, right? It's really all on perspective, in terms of how you look at things and outlook. And I think when I was younger and reflecting on my own past, forthcomings is my biggest struggle was the learning process, not learning from it, right? Like you said, I tried playing. I sucked at baseball, man. Like, I played basketball, I played football, wide receiver. But the thing about it was just like, my problem was I didn't know how to at such a young age, and I didn't realize that until maturity. But I didn't know how to learn from something I wasn't good at, right? And I looked at that as a loss. I was like, man, if I'm not good at this, either I failed or I just don't want to do it. But I really like the way that you broke that down, because it's a really interesting perspective. The other thing that I want to get into, you brought this up, man, is your aspirations of being a mayor. I think that's pretty impressive. Let's talk about that a little bit. Where did that come from? And if you're the New York City mayor, I know this is a big question, but I'm a big believer in seeing things through. What do you want to see get better for New York City?
Well, first of all, the where I got the mayor from is like, everywhere, it actually came from my cousin, kind of, because everywhere I used to go, he used to be like, yo, everybody knows you and gravitates toward you. You're like the mayor. Like, and then I'll just go other places. Like, when I used to work at the IRS, they used to be like, yo, you're the mayor of this place. Like, everybody likes you here and stuff like that. So then one day I was like, I want to be mayor of New York City. Like, I want to really be mayor of New York City. I really want to create change. The main thing is, what people don't understand is, like, New York is, everybody think because it's a big city, it's very equal, but it's really not. There's a lot of inequality in New York. People just don't see it. So I just want to bring people together. With the Black Lives Matter movement, it was like the first time I think I ever seen in my years of living like New York City united as far as like together, and everybody was one and everybody was drumming to the same beat. And that's how New York City should be. I think it'll be a much better city if everybody's together, everybody's as one, everybody's standing up for each other, no matter what they look like or, you know, who they are in life, as long as everybody's looking out for one another. And that was it was incredible to see that, and very amazing, because I never thought New York could ever be like united with all of our different neighborhoods in New York City. You got this neighborhood there, that neighborhood there, and that neighborhood don't go in that neighborhood. It's just a lot of stuff about New York City that people don't really understand, like it. But it's a very, very we segregate ourselves a lot in New York City. We definitely segregate ourselves a lot.
And
So
I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think my biggest takeaway with Black Lives Matter as well too is that you don't only just see Black people, right?
Exactly.
Like you see Latinos, you see, you know, Caucasian people, you see natives, right? They are just as outraged, or they want justice and they want equality just as much as we do. And like you said, especially in New York City, I grew up in the Bronx. And again, like you got those little civil divisions, like the South Bronx don't mess with the West Bronx. Like it's always this little thing, and to see everybody
hybrid and Pelham and all
right?
of that.
Washington don't get along with Webster, like, you know, it's this whole divide. The same thing with Brooklyn,
Country Club, and all of that in the Bronx.
right? Exactly. And I think that's beautiful. This movement like this, when you even translate into sports. You know, you even see them kneeling, and this was something that, in my opinion, I've seen Kaepernick get crucified for it 2-3 years ago, and now it's almost like a mainstay right now, at least before every game. So I think that's beautiful, honestly.
Yeah.
My last question that well, it's not really a question, it's really a message. My last message before we get into you know, our promo time and the projects and stuff you got coming up. If there's anyone listening to this, and I'm just gonna use this word and translate it to what you've defined it as, but if there's anyone that's disabled or abled with limitations as you describe it, they're listening to this, and I don't know, man, maybe they're down and, like, you know, either they weren't disabled prior to an accident and they don't know how to, you know, find a source of motivation, or they have been and they're struggling with that. What words would you have for them?
Life gets better. Life is like lemonade. Life is going to throw you lemons, and it's up to you to add the sugar and water, the ice, to make lemonade out of it. Remember one time I was in a barbershop, and it stuck with me. I heard this when I was probably like 12 years old, and it was an older guy. He was like, you got to play the hand that you was dealt like it's the hand that you wanted. So with that said, I didn't know what it meant at the time, but now as I got older, it's like, yeah, you got to play whatever you dealt with. That's what you wanted, and you're going to make the best of it. You're going to win. And you just got to look at it like that. Like, everybody's going to be dealt a different hand, but you roll with the punches. It is what it is.
Exactly. And I love that too, because I think a lot of times as well, and I was a victim of this in the past, but you know, we'll kind of get stuck in a rut of like, oh, I grew up poor, or I didn't have this and I didn't have that. And it's not an excuse. I had to, when I got older, right, I realized that I said I was wrong, and I had to reprogram my mind in terms of the way I was thinking. And, you know, when it, like you said, you know, and we used to play spades in high school at the table and stuff like that. Sometimes you'll get a shitty hand, but it's how you play that hand. Right? It's how you play that hand. And when I changed my mentality up here, that's when doors started opening for me, right? And that's when I started getting opportunities. And that's important, guys, to anyone that's listening to this, is that, trust me, you know, I'm pretty sure if you're having it hard or you're going through something, you're not the only one to have gone through something, and I'm probably someone out there that has worse off with you. So it's really just changing your mind frame and getting into that right perspective, right? And you know, going down that right path. So we're going to talk about the Garrison Project. I want you to get into that a little bit. Just tell everyone how you started it, what it is, and then also just, you know, what you got on tap.
Yeah, so the Garrison Redd Project is a non-for-profit organization, a 501c3. I started the Garrison Redd Project to provide opportunities for children with disabilities, especially ones coming from impoverished neighborhoods. So, which consisted of providing them with certain adaptive equipment, such as wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, things of that nature to help them achieve independence. See, what a lot of people don't know is that a wheelchair like the one I use, the frame only weighs about 10 pounds because it's titanium. However, that costs about $12,000. So insurance companies often won't cover them unless you have higher premium insurances and things of that nature. Sometimes you have to come out of pocket. But with that said, I take donations and I raise money to provide kids with these wheelchairs and with these walkers and devices to help them gain the independence that they need. Because in a standard chair, I don't know how would a person be fully independent due to the fact that the chair doesn't come apart. You can't put it in a car because it's so heavy. So just little things like that people that aren't in our predicament or never, been around someone that needed, assistance like that doesn't understand. So I try to bring awareness to that. So at the Garrison Redd Project, I hold adaptive, inclusive events as well, such as wheelchair basketball, where able-bodied individuals, such as yourself, can compete and play basketball amongst individuals in wheelchairs. So that way they can learn from one another. And then it creates a culture and an inclusive environment where people become comfortable with asking one another questions. So if you see your buddy, you've learned about one of your friends, say, for instance, Garrison, you found out he lifts 300 pounds and he does this and he's very independent and can do this, that, and the third by himself. Next time when you're an employer and next time somebody comes in a wheelchair possibly and on a job interview and you're doing the interview, you may think oh, I know he could do this. I seen he could do so much more than what I initially thought he could do. It just changes your perspective on the whole community in general. So I try to have those type of events. Those are the ones I really look forward to because everybody gets to learn from one another. And then you gain a friend, you gain somebody or someone that you never know. It could end up being one of your good friends 10 years down the line. And you're I met him at the Garrison Redd Project basketball event. And so I like just doing things like that, bringing people together from all walks of life and just to learn from one another. That's the only way the community can grow. People become understanding because what a lot of people don't understand is that 1 out of 5 individuals in the world identify themselves as having a disability. So that's 20% of the population. So it's honestly the highest minority demographic out there, 20% of people. So it takes people like myself to start get that ball rolling and just learn about how great individuals are out here. Also, people want to follow me. Check out my Instagram, Garrison Redd, Facebook, Garrison Redd, YouTube, Garrison Redd. I do tons of different types of videos. I'm in all different types of arenas. So, one day I may be modeling, next day I may be powerlifting, another day I may be just doing advocacy stuff. So check me out, definitely.
Absolutely. Garrison, thank you so much for being on our program, and I'm honored to have you, and thank you for putting time aside to share your story. It's an amazing story, and we haven't had someone like yourself on Fit Health Well as of yet, to speak to the disabled community. So you are the first guest for that. That's an honor. Right. So I appreciate you doing that and taking time. Again, guys, if you're listening to this as well, he's Garrison Redd on Instagram. Check out his YouTube. Also check out the website. If you'd like to work with him in terms of a community-based project or you'd like to donate as well, please reach out and we'll have more information regarding that. And then again, if you guys want to reach out to us on the show, whether you'd like to be a guest or you want feedback, you can hit us up at fithealthwell@gmail.com. Also, you can check out the website, fithealthwell.com. And then you can also check out the Instagram, same thing, Fit Health Well. Again, guys, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys listening. Garrison Redd, thank you so much. We'll keep in contact with you and keep track of your progress. Bro. And when this whole COVID thing is over, I definitely want to update on you in the competition, brother. I wish you the best of luck. You keep pushing. And I mean that literally.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is Jay Denson, and we are out.
All right.